What happens when we realize we're headed down a path that doesn't lead where we want to go? Hey, it's Aiden. Let's talk about something of meaning. So it's been about 10 weeks since my last podcast episode came out, and a lot has happened since then, and I wanted to dedicate an episode to reflecting on what I've learned, why it happened, and where I am today in this moment as we are here in early June. And essentially the question I want to look at is, why did I press pause? And to kind of go back to that space, what I had realized is that I had gotten really excited about getting started. And I had put in some really good structures for productivity. And I was really, really busy for about 6 weeks. And that was covering up the reality that I was busy heading in a direction that, as it turned out, wasn't the direction that really resonated for me. And so I wanted to kind of look at some of those lessons. But essentially, I was focusing on what I was doing instead of having done the more difficult and I think slower and deeper work of why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I showing up? And I suppose that why am I showing up leads to the question of how am I showing up? And then that leads to what am I doing when I show up? But I think that direction and that paradigm matters a lot. And I want to take a second here to acknowledge this great book that my dad recommended to me by Simon Sinek, and the book is called Find Your Why. And you can learn more about it out there on findyourwhy.com. And he also has a great TED Talk, I believe is called Start With Why, and refers to this idea of the golden circle, and that the golden circle is a circle of why and how and what, but that the center of the circle is the why, and that's where we're coming from. And then that leads to how we sort of live our why, which then leads to what we do. And that's, in a nutshell, I think the process that I engaged in about 10 weeks ago, although I didn't realize it at the time. That sort of came later. But I just had this intuition that I had been doing all this work and there just something wasn't feeling right. And I wasn't feeling energized to show up for myself. I wasn't feeling connected to my process. And I know, after having done this for, about 25 years now in the creative world and in the working world, that there's this feeling that emerges when it's right, where you can just sort of feel the inherent energy behind everything, and little coincidences start showing up, right? Little synchronicities, little messages from the universe is how I've sort of started to interpret it, that kind of reinforce, hey, you're on the right track. This is something worth doing. A friend of mine recently reminded me, he said something really, really beautiful. He said, well, the great thing about putting something out into the world is that if that thing is magic, then the world will make it happen. And I really think there's something to that. I think that when we are lined up with sort of the subtle energies of the universe, or whatever it is that is coming through our collective experience, either by ourselves or with the people we're working with, that the universe sort of aligns around that, it feels like, and you can almost feel like you're riding on a wave of energy. And the flip side of that is that when you're not in alignment with that energy, it can really, really feel difficult. Almost like, the way I kind of think about it is, it's almost like when I'm moving in the right direction, I can feel this lightness and buoyancy to everything that I'm doing. And when I'm headed in the wrong direction, it's like my whole body is made of lead all of a sudden. It's like hard to even move my limbs and hard to push myself. And I don't know what that is, but I've learned to trust it, because when I have followed that lightness and buoyancy, it has often, actually really always, led me toward outcomes that I was really happy about afterward. And when I sort of forced myself to move my leaden limbs in those directions, those are the times I can look back on with regret and say, you know what, I made it through that. Thanks to the universe that I made it through, but I really would have been better off if I hadn't. And so I was finding myself in that space, and it's a scary space to be in when you are trying to engage in your own creative work, trying to work for yourself, trying to push for yourself. It's a scary place to find yourself in that place of leaden limbs and feeling like you're on the wrong track. And my initial reaction was sort of panicky, right? And I definitely sat in kind of a difficult and dark place for a few days there, just kind of thinking, oh man, what am I doing? I shouldn't have done this. It's time to go, quote, get a real job and give up on this idea. What am I even doing? Why am I here? To my credit, or thanks to the universe, something shifted, and I wish I could tell you what shifted, but I think that maybe it's just I've now done enough reading and enough reflection that I knew that story I was telling myself wasn't the true story, and that really it was an indication for me to search. And so I decided to start looking internally, and I went on what my dad would call sort of an inner tracking journey. And it coincided with when I decided to commit to daily writing. And that was when I started Write Anyway. I want to say it was the beginning of April. I know that as I'm writing, or as I'm speaking today, I just wrote day 57 this morning. So that would be starting my 9th week, which is cool. It's amazing the journey I've gone on of writing every day for 9 weeks straight. That's kind of why I'm sitting here and talking about this. But it came back to the core lesson, and sort of the core reason that I was here is that I don't really know what this journey I'm on is going to end up looking like. I don't think any of us can know what it looks like in the end. But I keep coming back to the words create and share, and that those were connected to my deeper calling. I've written about wanting to find my own voice, and it comes back to create and share. So I started writing every day, and over these last 8 weeks of writing every day, and now I'm now on day 9 of also writing music every day. Some lessons have come up for me, and I just kind of wanted to share about my journey. And I think that this process for me, modeling my own vulnerability here, modeling my own challenge, feels really important to me. And because I can look back kind of through my own history and look at sort of the people that I followed and the people that I idolized. And maybe it was just a generational thing at that time, but I wasn't really given the tools or the messages that I wished I had been given around just how much of a struggle this can be day to day, and how many ups and downs there can be in our lives, and how that's all part of the process. And so I think that's kind of the first lesson that right now I'm really present to, which is that the internal distress, the feeling that things are not going in the right direction, is our body's way, or our subconscious mind's way, of telling us to look more closely, to look more deeply at ourselves, to take that time to reflect. The daily writing, as I said, has been just such an important part of that for me. The output of it is that I end up writing, 8 lines of poetry, or, a short little phrase or something. But the input into that is that I'm committing to sitting down with myself every morning and putting on music that allows me to just really go inside and, ask that question, like, what is here? What is it that I need to look at today? And through that process, some really beautiful things have emerged, some really difficult things have emerged. But just in going through that process day after day after day, I'm really becoming grateful for the challenges, grateful for the difficult feelings, because they are pointing me toward the work that needs doing. And what I've also come to see, which is really, really beautiful, is that I've recently had a lot of days where I sit down and I feel light and breezy, and things feel really unencumbered. And it's a feeling that honestly feels a little bit new to me, because I think I had spent years and years and years just sort of getting on with it. And I think that there was so much sort of built up difficulty that needed processing that that I hadn't really felt light and clear for years, I would say. I don't know, couldn't tell you exactly how long, but several years at least, if not close to a decade. And I know that that feeling also is temporary, but also it feels like, and it's just such a beautiful feeling, it feels just like nothing. It feels clear, and to just be sitting in the moment and just to be with whatever that morning is, and to feel no nagging sensation, no emergent challenge, is a beautiful feeling. And I know that that's not always going to be the morning that I wake up to, and also that's okay. So I'm really learning to just be with the ups, be with the downs, and to feel that feeling of being clear and light, and really have a lot of gratitude for that feeling. When I was, I guess it was about 10 years ago now, I had this moment where I woke up from a dream, and it was a song, a full song, and I literally woke up and I recorded it on my iPhone while I was still half asleep. And there's a line in that song, and the line is, "Been with it to let it out." And that keeps coming back to me right now as a theme of just being with it and taking time and having a practice of being with myself and what I need and processing that. In addition to creating and sharing, these other three themes have started to emerge for me, and I'm not writing these down in Sharpie or anything. They're still in pencil, and which is one of the other lessons that I'm learning here, which is like, I think that I love things being neat and tidy. I think a lot of us love things being neat and tidy, and I sort of drew this external structure of like what this business was going to look like, what my work was going to look like, and I had this whole thing planned out, and it was like, oh, cool. Now I've built this whole plan for the Lego set, but I'm not a Lego set, and the kind of work that I'm trying to do is circuitous, and it's a lot of it is slippery and messy, and that's actually what this is about, right? That when we are creating, we are going through it, and so that doesn't lend itself well to a clean architectural structure. But in pencil, I guess I'll say three more words in addition to create and share have really started to emerge for me, and those words are amplify, educate, and model. And showing up today and just sharing about my journey is a version of modeling. So is a daily commitment to writing and to playing music. I really want to be committed to my own creativity, because that's the thing that has continued to emerge for me again and again and again. And the thing that when I was ignoring it, it was causing, considerable trouble for me, sort of at the deep level, right? At the existential level. So modeling is really important to me, and modeling vulnerability and modeling my process and my learning, my journey. And then when I think about the word amplify, really what I'm thinking about is the idea of wanting to build up and tell the stories and hear from other people that are out there on the journey that are inspiring me. And I know that this podcast, that's going to be a part of this podcast. It will be a part of everything I'm doing, I think, at some point, whether I'm collaborating with people or sharing other people's stories. But amplify feels really, really important, because I know for me, knowing I'm not the only one out there going through this journey, and knowing what other people are learning is just so valuable. I mean, I couldn't be doing any of this on my own. I'm just constantly plugging in and listening to podcasts and reading books and doing all kinds of reflection and reading and just, pouring myself into understanding what are the things that really help us live lives of meaning and help us to do that in a way that, really feels good in our whole being. And then educate, of course, was, not only educating people on sort of technical stuff with music or creativity or different processes or tips or whatever, but also, sharing what it is that I've learned and, hopefully being able to help others out there that are looking for this in their own lives, be able to point them in the right direction and guide them. Victor Wooten has this great thing in his book, The Music Lesson, where he talks about that, a teacher can't really teach you anything. What they can do is they can show you things. But you have to do the teaching yourself. You really have to learn from yourself. So I hope that I can show you things. If you like this podcast, then give the Something of Meaning newsletter a try. Every Thursday, you'll get a short email with an idea, a question, a suggestion, and a quote that help cultivate creativity, connection, and community. Go to aidenyoung.com/newsletter and type in your email address and give it a try. Or you can find it at somethingofmeaning.com. So educate, amplify, model, create, and share. These words are sort of becoming my mantras, and they're all coming from this place of why. Why am I showing up? Right? What is sort of my reason for showing up? And it's simply a draft right now of that. I'm sure I'll have better words, but right now it's something like, what I'm really finding is my source is just wanting to connect deeply with what matters most to me, right? With my creativity, with connection, and share that with the world so that we can all together work towards living lives of connection and lives that honor our whole being. And that of course includes each of our inherent psychological needs to kind of find our own meaning, our own sense of meaning, and be able to share that with the world and feel like we have a purpose and a contribution to the world. So, this has been a couple of months really of just starting to try to have this unfold. And I think that's one of the big lessons, is that if I'm going to walk a path that's really something of meaning for me, that it has to come from within, and that I had built it from without first, but that's not going to work. There's no way to kind of twist our truth into a structure that already exists. We have to create it from within. We have to create it from the ground. And there's no way to speed this up. You just have to go through the process. And James Clear says, direction matters more than speed. And I absolutely love that. And so I think a lot of my process now is checking in with myself, on a daily basis and looking at my direction. And I think what that looks like is checking in with the feelings and then having trust that it will lead to outcomes, because I can't really control the speed with which any outcomes happen, but I can control the process of staying connected to myself and doing the work of watching and listening to my own voice and trusting that the universe will guide me in a good direction if I continue to do that. And I think the last lesson that's really coming up for me is the realization that I really do have limited energy and focus, and I was kind of trying to I'll just do everything all at once, and of course that doesn't work. And I read a bunch of stuff that told me that doesn't work, but I I like to joke I'm pretty good at not repeating mistakes over and over and over again, but I don't seem to be one of those people that can actually learn from others' mistakes first. I think I have to kind of I hear somebody else say, "Oh, don't touch the hot stove." And I'm like, "Oh, interesting. So that guy couldn't touch the hot stove. I wonder if I can touch the hot stove," I guess that's just sort of my natural curiosity getting the best of me. But in any case, I'm back. I'm here again. I pressed pause for a couple of months, and everything honestly feels totally different. And I think that as I'm going forward, the good news is I don't think something of meaning has changed. I think that totally resonates for me, maybe more than ever, as a North Star. And connection, creativity, community, those are definitely the right themes. I'm grateful to myself that when I look back, I'm like, yeah, I think I intuitively kind of knew the direction I was going in, but I can tell you that the thing I didn't know was sort of how this journey was going to take place. And so I'm hoping to move forward now in much more of a day-by-day, step-by-step, and just doing my best to come from that place of really being in connection with myself and really caring for and trusting myself, and go from there. So yeah, that's my update today, and I would love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts or reflections, please reach out. You can shoot me an email at somethingofmeaning@gmail.com, or you can find me on the internets, and you can use the comment box at somethingofmeaning.com, or find me on Instagram, and I just would love to hear from you. And thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to going forward on this journey together. Bye.